The critique of socialism that I've heard among self described capitalists is that socialism is force, whether it's through the state and the state getting involved and doing, regulations and creating laws, or if it's the workers seizing the means of production, that these are inherently violent acts, and that in a true free market, a true capitalist, voluntarist society, you wouldn't have the threat of violence and anybody could be free to do anything. So you would have the choice to go work for an employee in a dictatorial business, or you'd be free to set up a worker co op and people would be free to join. So, what would be your counter to that, to the capitalists who say, listen, we just want a free society. We just want a voluntary society, a pacifist society where violence is not being applied. And you folks are the ones who want the application of force.
Yeah, I find that virtually stupefying, but let me try to overcome my response to this as best I can. Again, let's start with the history. Capitalism, Marx once wrote, comes into this world dripping blood from every pore. The French Revolution was a violent revolution. Traditional societies, pre capitalist societies in every corner of the world were assaulted by capitalists coming from the more capitalist developed world and imposing the capitalist system on them. Whether the British in arriving in India or the Europeans arriving in what we now call North America, or any of the other examples of colonialism and imperialism. I mean, the notion that capitalism has something to do with peace or peacefulness blows my mind. The world has had two world wars, two cataclysms of immense destructiveness, unlike the world has ever seen before. Those were struggles among capitalist countries, chiefly Britain and Germany, and then others were drawn into it, competing with one another for colonies, for global positioning in a world market. The level of slaughter that the capitalist system has brought with it takes your breath away. When I hear the critiques of the awful things Stalin did, it's usually coming from the mouths of people who have a blitheful ignorance that they're not in a really good position to make this argument because it's going to bounce back and bite them in the rear end, number one. Number two, in capitalism itself, violence is always either threatened or imposed. Let me just give you two or three casual examples. In a capitalist free enterprise system of the sort you just referred to, let's use an hypothetical example. A group of capitalists are running a small company in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And they make the decision, which they're supposed to, they're the owner operators of a factory, that things are not looking too good for, let's say they produce, rubber shoes. And the rubber shoe market is looking a little slow. And so they make the decision that whereas they had last year bought machines to replace those that are worn out, and the year before, that this year they're not going to replace the old machines with new and expensive ones because they don't think the new and expensive ones, which only work if you produce more shoes, that they can sell those shoes. And it makes no sense to use the profits they earned last year to expand their machines if they won't be able to sell the extra output. Typical decision businesses make all the while. So they decide not to plow their profits back into the business. Hold on, wait 6 months or a year, see what the market looks like then, and if it looks better, well, they'll go in. Okay, this is a decision they're free to make, and indeed, they're hired to make that. That's their job as the owner operators of a private capitalist enterprise. Now, let's trace through the results. By deciding not to buy the machine that they had originally thought they would, they have to make a phone call. And call to the company they usually buy machines from, located in Brooklyn, New York, and they say, because they know the friend there, friend Al there, hey Al, we got to tell you, we're not going to be ordering the machine that we normally order from you at this time. and explaining why the market doesn't look so good for us, and so it's wiser for us not to do so. Al, who's in this business, understands these things, says that he's sorry to hear it, of course, but he understands. Then Al hangs up. Al then calls in my cousin Fred, and he says to Fred, Fred, I got bad news for you, Fred. You're fired. I can't continue to employ you here because you help make machines, which my latest phone call just told me we can't sell. And I can't pay you a wage to produce a machine that I can't sell. So I'm really sorry. It's Christmas Eve. Screw you. Go home and cry. That's a violent act. You've just taken away Fred's livelihood. The fact that the folks in Kenosha, Wisconsin, didn't know this, didn't intend any harm, that's really not very interesting to Fred or his wife and 6 children, is it? The violence that is done every day in a capitalist system is charmingly opaque to the people who live in a world of fantasy about what a quote unquote free market means.